Part 81. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 802. Gretel really hopes that one day, she can hold Sarah's hand and tell her that there is a dragon's nest. It can freely return to its dragon shape, spread its wings, extend its neck, spin in circles, and roll. No need to usually move around in human form, unable to stretch. When it came time to advance into deep sleep, I endured the drowsiness and ran around to find a suitable place. Not to mention this, you still have to work hard to bargain with others, and even sell the right to be studied, just to be able to afford the Dragon's Nest Hotel. When has the little princess of the Uehui family ever suffered such injustice? Of course, you still have to think about your wording. Otherwise, it will sound very similar to the familiar saying from the previous life. Sarala, this is the fish pond I contracted for you. The fish pond at least has some benefits, but the dragon's nest is all about effort and no benefits. Even if you throw a bunch of gold coins into it, apart from making a tinkling sound, it will not proliferate, it will not give birth to small gold coins, or even small silver coins. But unfortunately, we can't say yet. Although the dragon's nest has been built, emptying the reserve funds of the Mage Tower, the owner of the dragon's nest has not returned yet. Miss Sarala Uehui is still fast asleep in the dragon's nest hotel. By the way, how long will she sleep? Didn't we agree that it would be half a year? It's been more than half a year. Gretel ran to the dragon's nest hotel again. This time, Josh Pennington, a 16th level mage from the Conjuration department, was still rooted in the research room near the hotel, sweating profusely with his team. Hey, Master Nordmark, you're here again. Archmage Pennington gave Gretel a tacit, even teasing smile. Just as he said this, the instrument behind him started beeping. He turned around and rushed back. Hurry up! Hurry up! This waveform is very critical, the Archmage roared, his eyes that were smiling just now suddenly turned blood red. Hurry up and record the changes in elemental composition. Every time this waveform appears, it will be accompanied by rapid growth in length and weight. You must record it. The research room was the size of 2 classrooms, with a bunch of instruments of various sizes placed against the wall. The operations, records, and calculations performed by more than a dozen magicians were all yelled at by the Archmage. Archmage Pennington roared and ran around. Seeing that the waveform on a certain light screen became regular, he walked back slowly and smiled. Mage Nordmark, don't laugh at us. This waveform is really too rare, it only appeared 5 times in half a year. The first time and the second time, we didn't understand the pattern, and some data I didn't write it down. Gretel stared at him without saying a word. 1 second, 2 seconds, finally, Archmage Pennington scratched his grey hair and laughed. Well, Master Nordmark, I'm really sorry. I can't help it. The opportunity to record the advancement of dragons is too precious. The last time the council did this research was. He suddenly swallowed back the next words. Gretel stared at his disheveled hair and complained silently. Okay, looking at you guys, I guess you won't be able to do the subject in 100 or 200 years. Got carried away? It's a pity that before negotiating the price with them, I forgot to check the papers in the big library to see how many papers there are in related fields, how many years ago the most recent papers were, and what the research results were. If we check it and find that the earliest living observation data was hundreds of years ago, or that the recent data are all obtained from anatomy, maybe we can strive for better conditions for Sarala and reduce the number of observation items? Come, and see the recent achievements, he was reflecting sadly, when Archmage Pennington had already raised his hand and pulled him inside. In the past half-month, Miss Silver Dragon's length has grown quite rapidly. It is speculated that she has reached a period of rapid growth. The Archmage clicked a few times on a certain instrument, and Greet immediately saw that the instrument projected a light screen, divided into 3 pieces, reflecting silhouettes in 3 directions. He explained silently in his heart. Front view, side view, top view. Although they were 3 silhouettes with bumps and holes, as if they had been gnawed by dogs, God knows why they were displayed like this. Archmage Pennington didn't seem to take it seriously, and seemed to be used to it. He pressed it twice more, and the silhouettes in 3 directions quickly rotated and merged. Greet suddenly raised the corner of his mouth. Isn't this what his CT thought? Use the measurement data from various points and directions to piece it together, and finally get the outer contour. Sure enough, Cyrilla's figure began to appear in the light and shadow. There is only the outer outline, no details, and the parts wrapped and covered by the dragon wings and the parts pressed under the body are not distinguished. Obviously, these magicians of the conjuration system abided by the contract and only used visible light for measurement. However, when Cyrilla slept in dragon form, she folded her wings and curled up into a ball. In that case, 100,000 silver coins would be enough to make a bed. Greet thought silently. Miss Silver Dragon's length has grown from 14.5 meters to 16 meters in the past half month, Archmage Pennington quickly explained. That's what we measured because she was curled up all the way, so that length doesn't include most of the head and neck, but it does include a small part of the tail. Always. Is sleeping really that good? Gretel stared at the screen suspiciously. From the tone of Cyrilla's voice, it seemed as if she used to sleep and often turned sideways when she fell asleep. It is speculated that her length should be close to 20, or even 21 meters, which is very close to the data of an adult dragon. Her weight has not increased much, and she has even lost half of it recently, but it is accompanied by changes in the wind element. Having said this, Archmage Pennington began to pull out his hair again. He moved to another instrument, operated it a few times, and brought up a curve for Greet to see. A month and a half ago, Miss Silver Dragon's weight reached its peak, presumably due to eating a lot, and then she began to lose weight slowly. Over the past 10 days, the rate of weight loss suddenly accelerated, and at the same time, wind elements suddenly began to gather in large quantities. He sighed in distress. Oh, if this happens, the weight measurement will be inaccurate. If the measurement is not accurate, it is not accurate, which is good. Gretel finally felt a little happier. If it wasn't for his helplessness, he wouldn't want Sarah to be observed and measured like this. What is the body length, tail length, wingspan, and weight? These are girls' privacy and should not be known to anyone casually. Hey, there will be a dragon nest in the future. If Cyrilla wants to advance, she can advance in her own mage tower, which is safe and private. In another sense, uncertainty is good news. Silver dragons are born with the feather falling technique, and when they reach adulthood, they can gain the ability to control the wind aspect. The gathering of wind elements in large numbers should be an inevitable part of the process of adulthood. What did she eat during this time? Miss made no request. Archmage Pennington sighed in distress again. Before, there would be notes passed out, or shouting through the microphone, and we would prepare according to her requirements. In the past few months, there have been no requests. We have sent in large quantities of Warcraft meat and monsters based on past records. Crystalline minerals and metals. But I don't know if she ate, how much she ate, or which ones she chose. I don't know if she will pack it up and take it away. Gretel silently added for him. With Sarah's personality, she may not like Warcraft meat, but if she doesn't finish eating the shiny magic crystals and metals, she will almost certainly pack them away. By the way, how big is Cyrilla's space equipment reserve? Greet never asked, all she knew was that she never seemed to worry about not pretending enough. Teacher. She's making some noise. Someone suddenly shouted from across the room. Immediately afterwards, almost all the instruments shouted at the same moment. Beep beep beep. Oh oh. Do ta dash. Archmage Pennington no longer cared about talking to Gretel and flew over. Greet looked around, and for a moment, his heart started to beat. The way the equipment in the room is buzzing and the lines on the screen are jumping around is so similar to that in the ICU or the busy emergency room in the middle of the night. Although he couldn't see the patient, the frequency of the instrument was enough to make him nervous. Gretel looked around and rushed to the first instrument. On the instrument, the dragon's shadows fitted by the light lines have indeed begun to change drastically. The broad dragon wings spread out, flapped once, and flapped again. Then, the whole thing turned around, from straight to side. After turning 90 degrees, he suddenly rolled on the spot and the dragon wings spread out again. The two ends of the dragon's wings and the slender neck are pressed against the ground at the same time. Stretch as hard as you can, straighten your back and form an arch bridge. Gretel. Sarah, where did you get all these magical sleeping positions? If it were in human form, I could understand this pose. But in dragon form, it would be easy to break the neck. The little dragon woven with light and shadow turns left, right, and circles. After a while, he suddenly landed on his feet again, flapped his wings and raised his head. Raise your head to the highest point, open your mouth, and work hard upward. Our receiver. A magician screamed and jumped up. Next to him, another middle-aged magician sighed and patted him. My condolences. By the way, you haven't gotten used to it yet. Cyrilla is awake? In other words, is it a tossing in a half-dream and half-awake state? Gretel wasn't sure for a moment, and just stared at the screen, hoping to see more details. Not long after, a red light on the wall suddenly lit up, and a familiar, clear, and loud voice resounded through the laboratory. I'm awake. I'm hungry. I want to eat. Miss wants to have dinner. Go and get ready. Half of the magicians jumped up and rushed out of the laboratory. Greet ran against them in the opposite direction, threw himself in front of the instrument that made the sound, lay on it and shouted. Cyrilla, are you awake? I'm awake. Fortunately, this instrument can transmit sound in both directions. Cyrilla's voice immediately rose to a high pitch, surprised and delighted. Greet, are you outside? Where are you? 3,000 words. Another update completed. There is already a KFC restaurant in the community, but 3/4 is spicy and I don't want to eat it at all. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today we are doing antigen again. I sent out a 3-day supply at one time. I will do it once today. I will wait for notification when the next 2 times will be done. It seems that the May Day lifting of lockdown is just a dream. Also, there are 20,000 new cases a day, and we want to unblock them in a week. What are we thinking about? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 803. Chapter 802. Cyrilla we took a deep breath. Cyrilla. Just wait. I'll come down right now. Greet was surprised and happy. He has visited Miss Yinlong 7 or 8 times or 10 times since she fell into deep sleep, but never once did she find Cyrilla awake. On a daily basis, I am either sleeping, or sleeping soundly. What a lucky day. He yelled and ran out. He ran outside the laboratory and grabbed a magician. Where do you enter the dragon's lair? We're not allowed in. The magician was so busy that he was sweating profusely. He directed a string of floating saucers and moved things forward with flying steps. When Greet pulled it like this, the floating disc jingled, and a pile of ore immediately fell down. The magician screamed in pain, raised his hand, and the wind whirlpool swept out, and quickly rolled the ores back to the floating dish. Throwing another cleaning technique, the slag in the ground was swept away, and there was still enough energy left to guide the slag to fall on the floating disc, 1 grain at a time. We have a contract and are not allowed to enter the dragon's nest. We can only send these things through the portal, and no one can leave that portal. Greet ran forward beside him and had already reached a light gate. 5 or 6 magicians lined up, weighed, recorded, manipulated the floating disc to deform slightly, and poured things into the light door. A level 7 blue wind sheep, weighing 165 pounds. A level 7 black scale swordfish, weighing 328 pounds. A box of water crystal ore weighs 1,000 pounds. Batch after batch of food poured into the light door, rippled slightly, and disappeared. Occasionally, when the things poured are larger or heavier, the ripples are more transparent, and a continuous sound can be heard from the other side of the light door. Click, 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 click dash. This kind of portal can transport goods, and it can transport living people. Gretel has some common sense at least, and knows that his own physical body is not that strong, and he will definitely not be able to pass through this kind of portal. Maybe someone can get through it, maybe there are high-level spellcasters who can mobilize magic protection to get through it, but he is definitely not included. Maybe he was still alive when he rushed towards the light door, but what he was when he rushed to the opposite side, that's hard to say. He looked around and caught the commander of the scene, Archmage Pennington. Where do you enter the dragon's lair? The first time they met, he teleported directly from the teleportation array to the inside of the dragon's nest. He must know. Not here. Archmage Pennington rarely saw Greet's anxious look. He smiled and admired it for a second before pointing him in the direction. Go out and take the first left at the intersection. Greet turned around and ran back, and sure enough he found another teleportation array, with the manager of the Dragon's Nest Hotel guarding it. Seeing him coming, the manager raised his hand, shook it, and said hello with a smile. Mage Nordmark? Don't worry, we have been watching the teleportation array these days and no one is allowed to pass by. You see, we have dismantled the hub of the teleportation array. Gretel stepped into the teleportation array from him. The light in front of him flickered on and off, and he was already in the dragon's lair. He raised his head, and before he could clearly see the scene in front of him, he shuddered instantly. Cold. So cold. The cold and heat resistant that has been hanging on my body seems a bit overwhelming. Greet knew that this was due to the large accumulation of elements, and the chill that penetrated was different from the usual simple low temperature. He patted the space bag and took out a pendant, a greeting gift from Mr. Space-Time Barrier. With just a flash, elemental endurance was triggered. The clouds and mist in front of me covered my clothes and penetrated my bones. Greet braved the clouds and mist, and after walking for a long time, he saw a huge silver dragon lying in front of him, burying his head in a pile of food and feasting. Cirella! Gretel shouted happily. Yinlong raised his neck, looked at him, and was suddenly stunned. She looked left and right, then took a sudden breath. The cold mist surrounding her was swallowed by her like a whale sucking water, and disappeared. This is probably a protective element during the advancement of the dragon clan? With this thing here, the enemy can't even touch her? Gretel speculated. Cirera immediately buried her head back, chewing and answering vaguely. You find a place to sit first and wait for me to eat for a while. Well, I'm so hungry. The huge mouth opened, and with one bite, the sheep disappeared. After chewing a few times, he raised his head and swallowed, and saw a small bump bulging on the dragon's neck, slowly going downwards. Another bite, and half of the big fish, longer than a human body, disappeared in an instant. Well, it's not advisable to approach Cirilla at this moment. Gretel silently concluded. It's not that she's so hungry that she'll eat herself, but that when she chews food, some residue will fly out. Judging from the intensity of the chewing, even if the residue flew out and hit me, I would have to use the mage armor to withstand it. Gretel honestly found a place not far from the food pile and sat down peacefully. When the clouds and mist receded, he could see clearly. The scales on the silver dragon's body shone brightly, like snow and silver, and were even brighter than when he first saw them. If it were not during the activity, you could still see the gaps in the scales clearly, and they were no different from pure silver. After taking a closer look, I realized that Sarala was pitifully thin at this moment. The ribs under the neck and chest can be clearly seen one by one. The flexible front paws and the strong and powerful hind paws are all tightened inward, and the shapes of tendons, bones, and muscles are clearly distinct one by one. You must be so hungry that you are all skin and bones. He has been sleeping for most of the year and has only eaten a few times. There is probably a question mark as to whether the diet can meet the metabolic needs of the body. Not to mention that you have grown so much during sleep, and the nutrients needed for growth and development cannot come from food, but must come from your own body. Eat, come on, eat quickly. He stood on tiptoes and took a closer look at the piles of food in front of him. Sarala ate quickly, and the magicians poured it down not too slowly. They were like hoppers in a factory, clattering and pouring down through the light door. In just a short time, the food in front of Sarara had piled up into a hill more than 2 meters high. As the food fell, ores and magic crystals kept rolling down, shining brightly, covering the ground. If it were normal times, Sarala would have picked up these shiny things to make the bed, right? Greet thought silently. Looking at Sarala again, she swallowed a mouthful of monster meat, a mouthful of ore, and a mouthful of magic crystal. As she ate, she squinted her eyes in contentment. It was obvious that these things that ordinary humans were not blessed to consume were all high-quality delicacies to her, just right for her to replenish her much-needed physical strength. Gretel carefully observed it for a while, then summoned the hand of the mage, and with a bang, he dragged a big bird out of the food pile. The feathers of that big bird are colorful and gorgeous. The most important thing is that it is only the size of a pheasant, a scale that Greet can handle. If it were a whole pig, or a sheep, or something bigger, forget it, Bernard didn't come today. Yinlong glanced sideways, and when he saw it was him, he didn't react at all and continued to eat. Gretel dragged the big bird back a dozen steps, set up a large pot, and lit a blazing fire underneath. Boiling water, scalding, plucking hair, disemboweling. Sarala, do you want to eat boiled or baked? It's all okay. Well, click click click. Greet burst into laughter. Sarala is really not picky when it comes to food. As long as it tastes good, it can be made in any way or in any flavor. So, let's make something she hasn't eaten today. He poured out the boiling water, replaced it with a new pot, chopped the big bird into evenly sized pieces, put it in cold water, added ginger slices and Sichuan peppercorns, poured in wine, blanch it for a while, rinse it in cold water and drain it for later use. Peel potatoes and cut into cubes, and cut onions into cubes and set aside. Heat oil in a pot, add dried chilies and Sichuan peppercorns and sauté until fragrant, add ginger slices and bird meat pieces and stir-fry for a while, add wine, sauce, and continue to stir-fry. The delicious aroma of meat and the hot aroma of various spices soon spread out in a breathtaking way. Well. The silver dragon's huge head suddenly turned around. Facing Greet, his nostrils flaring, he took a hard sniff. The storm blew. Gretel's hair was flying, and all the skirts of her clothes were floating forward. Under the iron pot in front of him, the burning flames completely reversed their direction and floated out towards Sarala. Gretel has no time to estimate these. He hurriedly called out 2 high-level mage hands, one on each side, to hold the iron pot steady. Then he lowered his waist and sat on the horse, struggling to stabilize his body. Only then did he have time to increase the volume. Sarala. The pot almost tipped over. I'm hungry. Sarala answered confidently. Gretel's breath was choked in his throat, and he didn't know whether he should just spray it back. Then, he saw Sarala turning her head forward, opening her mouth, and expanding her chest and abdomen. For a moment, there was only one sentence in Gretel's mind that repeatedly flashed across the screen. We took a deep breath. We took a deep breath. Moonlight took a deep breath. The secret is above all, she must not spray anything. Greed prayed silently. Fortunately, silver dragons generally don't breathe fire, they just spray some cold mist, paralyzing gas, and so on. I have elemental endurance activated on me, so I should be able to withstand it. Sand and rocks were flying, and ores and magic crystals were rolling all over the ground. The ores and magic crystals the size of dates, peaches, and melons were swept up by this breath, flew up on their own, and disappeared into Cyrilla's mouth. This efficiency is much faster than her lowering her head to bite one by one. Gretel calmed down and moved the stove a dozen steps further before continuing to work. Chicken nuggets, oh no, after frying the big bird nuggets, pour in a large bottle of beer so that the water covers the top of the nuggets. Start with high heat, then boil, then reduce to low heat, simmer, stew. After simmering until the soup thickened, Greet carefully picked up a piece with the hand of the mage. Poke it, if you can poke it in easily, blow it to cool it and taste it. Gretel. Don't eat it secretly. I'll try it. Gretel quickly poured down the potatoes, stirred them, and then put the lid back on the pot. Don't worry, when this pot is cooked, I'll wait for you to eat together. The community posted something again today. You can also buy more things at the vegetable store in the community. You can buy chickens, freshly killed and deveined, each weighing 2.5–2.8 pounds for 62 yuan. It's a pity that my refrigerator can't hold it anymore, so I have to finish the stored items quickly. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks at Mobi for the 100 rating points. The community behind us is on the list again today. Yesterday it was the communities to our left and right. We were surrounded on three sides, and the other side was the road. They say we are innocent, does anyone believe it? Obviously not, so we are doing nucleic acid today. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 804. Cyrilla's storm inhalation continued. Gretel didn't know how long it lasted. In short, he stewed a large pot of chicken, stewed another pot of beef brisket, and marinated a lamb chop, which can be set up over a fire to grill at any time. On Cyrilla's side, when Greet had stewed the large plate of chicken, he began to pick out the magic crystals and carefully put them into the space bag. When Greet finished stir-frying the beef brisket, added enough water, and started to simmer over low heat, the shiny and particularly pleasing parts of the magic ore were picked out and piled aside. And when Gretel cut all the lamb chops, marinated them with seasonings, and set them aside, Cyrilla picked out all the smaller and more tender monsters and carefully put them away. Finally, the silver dragon let out a huge belch and announced loudly, "I'm done eating." A 2-meter-long frozen fish fell out of the light door and rolled on the pile of food. It didn't stop until it rolled to the bottom, rubbing against the shiny scales on the ground. Then, the light door, which had been pouring food down with a splash, flashed twice, and then slowly stopped. Leave a pile of food in place that is 2 meters high and roughly equal to a square pyramid. Greet estimated that the entire content of this thing has been updated more than once. If minerals and meat are included together, and the average density of all foods is estimated to be 3 tons/cubic meter. The food Cyrilla has eaten so far has definitely exceeded her own weight. And the effect of eating like this is immediate. At the very least, the previously shriveled dragon body has become plump. Something is filled between the scales, skin, and muscles, making it round and elastic. The skinny silver dragon seemed to have returned to normal after this feast of food and drink. She stood there, stretched her neck high, raised her head, flapped her dragon wings twice, and let out a high-pitched dragon roar. Hold head high. Gretel had quick eyesight and skill, and he created a shelter hut and placed himself, a large chicken stew pot, a beef stew pot, and a mutton chopping board upside down inside. The moment before the protective cover was buckled down, from the corner of his eye, he saw flying sand and rocks, scraped fish scales and broken slag over the food pile, and a plume of grey smoke rolled up on the spot. So far so good. If the pot is overturned, the chopping board is smashed, the food is ruined, and I am the one who ends up working hard all over again. Gretel. Are you ready? I want to eat. A clear, energetic voice came from outside the hut. The sound was very low, not the rumbling sound of a silver dragon with its head bent down and a subwoofer, but the female voice that I was used to hearing every day. The pattering and brisk footsteps outside the hut are not the sound of a silver dragon coming from far away, the ground shaking, and one step far away from the other. Thank God, Cyrilla finally returned to her human form. Greet breathed a sigh of relief, manipulated the shelter to open a door, and responded loudly. Okay. 2 are ready, and 1 wants to be baked fresh. You eat it first, and I'll bake it for you. Cyrilla cheered and ran in quickly. After looking around, he pulled out 2 large bowls and went directly to the pot to scoop out. Gretel watched her ladle out a bowlful of chicken and another bowlful of beef brisket, and finally couldn't help but ask. Cyrilla, aren't you full? I'm full, the silver dragon girl replied confidently. While answering, he said "Doin" and "Doin" twice, and placed 2 plates of food on the table. It's not like you can't continue eating when you're full. Greet lowered his head silently, set up the oven, and prepared to grill the lamb chops. As soon as the fire was lit, Cyrilla suddenly raised her head, pursed her lips and sprayed. Shh. A cold mist suddenly rolled over, extinguishing the flames in the oven, leaving only the cold charcoal. The cold mist rolled back instantly, not touching Greet at all. He immediately raised his head, and Cyrilla sat at the table with a smile, waving to him. Greet, let's eat together. Let's bake it after eating. While talking, he already took out a porcelain plate, a white, smooth porcelain plate with a dark blue arabesque pattern. From the large plate of chicken, he deftly picked out the tip of a chicken wing and a chicken leg among the chicken wings. Greet, eat it. This kind of monster is good at flying and has strong jumping ability. Its wings and legs are especially delicious. Hey, this is a hen, and there are eggs. I'll give you one too. Greet, your craftsmanship is so good. Then it was silenced. Cyrilla held the big ocean bowl in both hands, swung her bow from left to right, and ate until her head was buried in it. Within a short time, the corners of the mouth and cheeks were stained with large swaths of sauce, and with a single swipe of the hand, a painted face appeared. Greet was both amused and distressed. This is how long you have been hungry. Even if you are not hungry, eating only raw meat and magic crystals for most of the year is nothing compared to having delicious food to eat. Silver dragons are no better than those black dragons, green dragons, etc. Silver dragons like food and enjoy human food. These guys in the council only know how to regenerate monsters, so why can't they roast a lamb for her? Facts have proved that the so-called fullness of the silver dragon and the so-called fullness of the silver dragon in human form are indeed 2 different concepts. The silver dragon in human form looks like it has another stomach, and it is an empty stomach that has been hungry for more than half a year. Also, after an ordinary human girl is full, she still has another stomach for eating desserts, let alone a dragon. As a result, Gretel watched helplessly as the whole pot of chicken, except for the single bit that was singled out, was swept away by Cyrilla. The unknown monster bird weighed about 8 or 9 kilograms, and the potatoes, carrots, and onions added to the pot weighed almost the same. Just like that, Sirara finished the meal in one go, and then swept up a whole pot of beef brisket. Greet. Grilled lamb chops. Hiccup, wait for me, what level of monsters are this bird and this cow? It's amazing. I just ate one chicken wing, one chicken leg, a small egg, and 2 pieces of beef brisket. Hurry up. You've rested for so long. When you're full, you have to move around. Don't be lazy here. Gretel pushed himself up with difficulty. It was a mistake. I just ate less beef brisket, but now I have to eat another piece of lamb chop. How can I eat it? By the time Greet had finished grilling all the lamb chops and struggled to eat the last piece, Sirala had already devoured all the other lamb chops. He sighed with satisfaction and burped lightly. Okay, I'm full. Greet, let's pack up and go back. Clean up. Greet put the pots and pans back into the space bag, waved away the shelter cabin, and saw Sirala walking over quickly, picking and choosing. Soon, she sorted the pile of food on the ground into categories and put them all back into the space bags. Several tons of supplies were swept away, plus the ones that Sirara had selected and kept separately. Just thinking about it, Gretel gasped for the council. How much is such a huge pile of supplies, magic crystals, magic minerals, and advanced warcraft ingredients worth? Even if he couldn't buy him a mage tower, maybe it would be enough for half a tower, right? Of course, Gretel didn't have the slightest mental barrier when he saw Sirara eating and taking these supplies. The Parliament has the opportunity to study the living dragons, and can they just catch up with the advancement of the dragons and study the changes in elements during their advancement? The last time was hundreds of years ago. If you want to spend contribution points to buy this opportunity, it will cost you a lot of money. But in the previous contract, it only mentioned paying the room fee and feeding Sirala. Then, of course, the food sent into the dragon's lair through the light door belongs to Sirala. When you're full, pick it up, isn't that a matter of course? Of course, in Greet's view, both parties were willing to admit defeat. The council could not take back the food that had been poured in, and Sirara could not ask for another batch except to pick it up, but Miss Yinlong was obviously not satisfied. She stood on tiptoes and looked around. Sirala, what are you looking for? Greet walked to her side and looked around following her gaze. The Dragon's Nest Hotel was completely empty. It was just as it was when you came in, and it's still the same now. The parliamentary probes are installed very restrainedly and are almost always hidden in places where they are not easily seen, such as in cracks in rocks or on the ceiling. At first glance, you can basically see nothing. There's nothing you can bring with you, right? Did something fall under the load-bearing plate? But the 4 edges of the load-bearing plate are all on the ground, and there are no gaps. Then, he saw Sirala turning towards him, with a troubled face. Gretel, do you think I can carry this golden bed back? Gretel. Sirara, wake up. This is not a golden bed. It's not made of gold. It's just a steel plate, or a plate made of other materials, with gold foil on it, or a layer of gold plating. And you slept on it for so long, walking, jumping, rolling and so on. Scales scrape, claws scratch. Those pits on the load-bearing plate, those scratches one by one, those large areas of exposed steel surface. Let's go, he pulled the silver dragon girl with all his strength. It's only plated with a layer of gold. Not much. And you've already scratched and rubbed it off a lot. If you have time to carry the steel bed away, why not go back as soon as possible? Sirara was pulled by him and looked back with regret every step of the way. Fortunately, the silver dragon girl was obedient enough, otherwise Gretel thought to himself that with his strength, he would never be able to drag a dragon. Sirala could drag him backwards with just one little finger. Dragging and dragging, dragging and dragging, finally dragged out of the Dragon Nest Hotel. Sarala was in a state of lethargy until she got off Igor Peak, and then she became lively again. Hey, no matter what, I saved a lot of ores and a lot of magic crystals this time. She smiled with crooked eyes, raised her arms, and waved outward as hard as she could. My bed can be expanded to such a large area. Greet stayed by her side, smiling slightly and saying nothing. The two of them climbed over the small ridge, and the mage tower came into view. Cyril looked up and was stunned on the spot. Gretel, mage tower, why are you so taller, and so fatter? There are double monthly passes from the 28th to the 30th of this month. Please remember to vote for me when the time comes. As long as there are 2,000 votes, 2 additional chapters will be added. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. By the way, I have been reduced to asking my readers in the group what is the volume of a 2-meter high square cone with equilateral triangles on all 4 sides. And he also made a mistake between a regular tetrahedron and a regular square pyramid. As a result, readers who missed the previous article asked in shock, why did the group start discussing primary 6 mathematics? That's not it, the author is stupid and lazy. He has forgotten all the formulas and is too lazy to check it himself. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 805. Cyrilla stood on the small ridge, her gaze moving upward inch by inch. Gretel's mage tower, as a high-level mage tower with 9 floors above ground, is already grand enough. When a magician builds a magician tower, it's not like the developer in Gretel's previous life who built a residential building with floor heights as high as 3 meters. Oh, not even 3 meters. According to the Residential Building Design Code, the floor height of ordinary residential buildings should be 2.80 meters. The indoor clear height of bedrooms and living rooms, halls, should not be less than 2.40 meters. 3 meters. Counting the floor thickness, 3 meters does not exist. An extra 0.1 meter of floor height means an extra 0.1 meter of material cost. To build more than 10 floors, the added weight of the entire building requires extra solid foundations. The magicians build the magician tower differently. They pay attention to an open and comfortable tower. What's more, in Gretel's 9-story mage tower, 4 floors are P4 laboratories. To put instruments and pipes, the height of the floors must be increased. Needless to say, there is also the lobby on the 1st floor, as well as the owner's living room and dining room. The height is too low, and the whole thing will look very depressing. Therefore, Greet's 9-story mage tower originally reached a height of 50 meters including the spire. In Gretel's previous life, it was already 16 stories high, and the hills below made it even taller. Standing on the top floor, looking out into the distance, you can directly see the sparkling sea. But now, the entire mage tower has grown a lot fatter and taller. What was originally tall and straight has become thick and fat. To use Gretel's words from his previous life, Lifeng is like an old monk, and Baoku is like a beautiful woman. This mage tower has fallen from a beauty to an old man in a living way. How could this happen? How could this happen? Cyrilla's lips were pouted higher and higher, her brows were furrowed, and the corners of her eyes were bent downwards, almost causing tears of grievance. Greet's mage tower, such a good and beautiful mage tower, why did it suddenly become fat and ugly? It's almost like, well, it's almost like her figure has transformed into Bernard's figure. Oh no, I have to eat a lot of fat. I can't see it anymore. Gretel looked on, feeling a little embarrassed. He tugged at the corner of Miss Yinlong's clothes. Cyrilla, don't be unhappy. The renovation of the mage tower, well, there is a reason. You will know if you come with me. They went all the way down the mountain and entered the mage tower. Starting from the tower gate, Cyrilla noticed that everyone who greeted her had mysterious and enthusiastic smiles on their faces. "Miss Sarah, are you back? Miss Sarah, long time no see. Miss Sarah, have you seen the renovation of the Mage Tower?" Cyrilla looked left and right, her face becoming more and more confused. Why, everyone thinks that the renovation of the Mage Tower is a happy event. Should she be happy? It's obviously so ugly. Greed pulled her all the way up. The elevator rose and rose, reaching the 9th floor, but it had not yet stopped, and the elevator door had not been opened. Cyrilla turned to look at Gretel suspiciously. I saw him smiling and standing quietly, as if he didn't care at all. It wasn't until the extra weight under his feet completely disappeared that he turned his head and said softly, "Ding." The elevator door slides open silently. Cyrilla couldn't wait to jump out of the elevator, immediately opened her eyes wide, and let out a soft cry. Wow! So big! So big! What a big hall! Although it is a bit smaller than the lobby of my aunt's house and a bit smaller than the Dragon's Nest Hotel, it is still very big. She couldn't help but stretch out her hands, tap her toes, and spin in a circle. The figure is light and elegant, and the skirt rotates silently, blooming into a delicate flower. Gretel! You're so good. No wonder the Mage Tower is made so thick. No wonder the Mage Tower is so tall. The high part is her dragon's nest. The thickened circle is to make her dragon's nest as spacious as possible. How much effort Gretel put into making such a big change to the Mage Tower, and how much it cost. The silver dragon girl's eyes, the corners of her mouth, the hem of her skirt, and her whole body were shining brightly. After spinning twice, she rushed over like the wind and hung around Greet's neck. Still feeling it wasn't enough, he simply hugged Greet's waist and took him spinning around, and then around again. "That's so kind of you. Such a big dragon's nest. Gretel, cough 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 cough. Girl, you hugged me too tightly. Relax a little. I can't breathe." It's a pity that his power is not just a drop in the ocean, but at least a drop in the bucket to Cyrilla. He was held, or rather strangled, by Cyrilla, and spun around in more than 10 circles at once before reacting and patting her shoulder and back. "Put me down. Put me down. I still have a gift for you." Greet struggled and shouted again, and was finally let down. He quickly walked out for more than 10 steps, and at the same time flicked his fingers to refresh himself on various protections, and then patted the space bag. Look! 2 large wooden boxes fell to the ground one after another. In addition to the dull banging sound, there was also the crisp sound of metal hitting each other, faintly coming from inside the box. Cyrilla's eyes lit up, and just as she was about to step forward, Gretel flicked her fingers. Boom! Boom! The lid of the box opened instantly under the power of magic, revealing a box full of brilliant silver coins. Immediately afterwards, 2 large force field hands flew out, one raised to one side. Hey yo! Crash, la, la, la dash. The wooden box overturned and the silver coins rolled all over the floor. Cyrilla stood there blankly, looking at the brilliant place in front of her, her silver blue eyes almost turning into the color of silver coins. It wasn't until a silver coin rolled in front of her and lightly bumped the toe of her boots that she suddenly woke up. He bent down and picked up the silver coin, twirled it on his fingertips, and took a bite. There was a click and Greet trembled. He watched helplessly as the silver coin deformed, bent, and cracked in half between Cyrilla's thin white and sharp teeth. Miss Yinlong even licked the broken wound before raising her face and asking him with a smile. "Gretel, is this for me? Is this really for me?" "It's for you." Gretel took a breath and nodded vigorously. "Make a bed for you. There are 100,000 silver coins here. I have calculated it. If there is only one layer, you curl up, tighten your wings, and bury your head under the wings. It should be enough." to make a bed. The more he spoke, the more guilty he became. The bed made for the dragon does not use gold coins, but silver coins. It only has one layer, and people have to curl up to sleep. This is too unfair. If you continue to be stingy, you can only plating gold on the ground. However, Cyrilla didn't care about this. Her eyes shone brightly, she looked at the silver coins rolling all over the floor with joy, and suddenly raised her hand. In an instant, Gretel saw all the silver coins floating. What a magnificent scene this is! 100,000 silver coins are like 100,000 silver stars, sinking and floating in the air. Around Cyrilla, gently undulating, spinning, and dancing happily. The silver coins scattered the light from the lighting technique into thousands of strands. The light is dotted around the silver dragon girl. At a glance, she looks like a pure white peacock, spreading her shining tail feathers. Gretel stood there with his eyes wide open, frightened by the beautiful scenery in front of him, unable to move for a moment. Cyrilla raised her face to receive the silver light, and spun around in one circle, and then around again. The more she spun, the more joy she felt. Soon, the silver coins suspended in the air began to rotate with her movements, like a silver tornado. The rotation became faster and faster, and the rotation became denser and denser. Even Cyrilla's tall figure was almost invisible. After turning around for an unknown number of times, Cyrilla finally stretched out her arms, raised her head and closed her eyes. There was a clanking sound, and the silver tornado spread out instantly, filling up into a cloud, and then falling down like raindrops. A rain of 100,000 silver coins. Greet sighed sincerely. He subconsciously stretched out his hand, and the rain of silver coins that perfectly avoided him and didn't hit him at all immediately separated one and fell into the palm of his hand. The surface of the silver coin is slightly hot. The area of the rain cloud was not large, 5 or 6 meters wide and about 10 meters long, roughly the same area as the area where Cyrilla curled up to sleep. They fell from a high altitude, rolled on the ground, collided and overlapped, and soon spread out into a brilliant place. Of course, it is impossible to spread them all evenly. There are always small piles in some places, and large areas of the ground are exposed in other places. Cyrilla didn't care, and didn't make any adjustments. Instead, she raised her hand in the air again. Rise. The shiny magic ore fell to the ground, forming a small, raised pile on the bed of silver coins. Then, brilliant gold coins, sparkling magic crystals, and dazzling gems poured down from her hands one after another, shining like jewels and dazzling flowers. Gretel, you are so good. I declare that from now on, this place will be my bed. Cyrilla raised her head high, spread her hands, and announced loudly. She took a deep breath, and her whole body suddenly blurred and began to glow violently. Thousands of silver lights burst out. Greet closed her eyes subconsciously and raised her hands to cover her face. When he opened his eyes again, the huge, brilliant silver dragon was already standing in front of him, looking down. Then she folded her wings, curled down, and rolled happily. Jingle bells, tinkle bells, gold and silver jewels rolled on her scales, making a crisp and sweet sound. Greet, you are so kind to me. I thought it would take me another 100 years to save a bed. When my aunt first went out to become independent, she even worked as a mercenary everywhere, digging magic crystal mines, and saved it. It takes 100 years to save enough, and there are still many ores and crystals. Roll once, then roll again. Huge wind pressure hit his face, and Greet held his breath subconsciously, trying not to take a step back. Miss, you can just roll around a few times, but don't release the dragon's power. Boom. A huge explosion sounded under the tower. Accompanied by Master Norwood's amplification, he roared angrily. Who is releasing the panic technique? My hand shook. An alchemy cauldron exploded. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. With a scream, our community has been hit. The calculation starts again in 14 days, wow 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 wow. So our community is special, follows the rules, and stays at home for 25 days. What is the reason? What's the picture? My mood is broken. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 806. Greet rolled down from the dragon's nest in disgrace, comforted Master Norwood in every possible way, and compensated the alchemy cauldron. Correction, he promised to use the funds from the mage tower to buy a new alchemy cauldron and a batch of corresponding medicines. As for when we conduct experiments in the future, will there be a sudden explosion like this? Greet only haha. Well, training, meditating, and researching under Longway, even a mild Longway, is equivalent to daily mountaineering with heavy loads. It is quite effective for mental training. As for sudden accidents, well, there are always occasional losses, and you may not be successful every time you do experiments. But there is another problem. Manevia brushed the hair on her cheek, pushed the strand of hair that escaped from the braid behind her ear, and said calmly. In the basement of the Mage Tower, a large number of penicillium and streptomyces are cultivated all year round. Long-term exposure to the dragon's breath may cause them to mutate, causing the effect of the medicine to change or become ineffective. Cirrara moved her body uneasily, wanting to say something like "I won't leak my breath while sleeping," or "I'll try to control it," or something like that. Greet patted her arm and smiled at the natural priest. After the production of penicillin and streptomycin is on the right track, it is true that there is no need to keep it in the Mage Tower. If it is mass production, will a separate site be opened for you in the research institute behind the hospital, or in the Mage Tower of the hospital? Anavia was a little moved, but also felt a little pity. After mass production and all the production conditions are adjusted, she doesn't need to keep watching. As long as you find a room with constant temperature and humidity, have an apprentice regularly cast the growth-promoting spell, and have an alchemist regularly extract the liquid and convert it into potions, you'll be fine. As for follow-up research, in fact, more trips to the hospital are needed. Now you have two research directions. Greet observed the words and said with a smile. The first is to move the production equipment to the research institute behind the hospital, or to continue production in the hospital's Mage Tower, and at the same time try to find other drugs to kill bacteria. Believe me, if you follow this idea, you will definitely be able to find at least dozens of them. There are too many antibiotics extracted from microbial culture fluid. In addition to penicillin and streptomycin, there are also erythromycin, neomycin, chloramphenicol, tetracycline, various cephalosporins. If you travel far and wide, and are lucky enough, you might even be able to find vancomycin. As for meropenem, forget it, that thing is a synthetic antibiotic. With the current chemical level of the Magic Council, maybe after he becomes a legend, we can see if he persists for a few hundred years. Anavia's expression changed slightly, and then she nodded firmly. Although she didn't know where Master Nordmark's confidence lay, the world was so big that she believed that there must be similar creatures. She has relied on her own strength to find a new potion. If you continue on this path resolutely and find 10 or 8 kinds of potions, even though Master Nordmark is the founder, no one can shake her status. There is another research direction, which is to continue directed research in the Mage Tower here. Let's see how these little things will change under the influence of the dragon's breath. It has a fixed effect and carries out targeted mutagenesis on organisms. This is a good thing that cannot be obtained in biological research. In previous lives, those biologists used ultraviolet light, used radioactive sources, and even sent things into space. They spent such a large amount of money just to see if this thing would have strange characteristics. Now, there is a dragon's nest on top, which is a good thing that you can't even ask for. Hey, if Anavia is not interested, how about recruiting another group of people to work on this project? I want to do this too. Anavia's eyes were shining. She blurted out and immediately shrank back. It seems that I am too busy. It's okay, go and recruit people, Greet said confidently. Anyway, it's the end of the year, and we have collected enough food for next year's great famine. Everyone in the God of Nature religion should be idle. Find some to come over to work, or, if you can bear it, recruit a few. You can also be a high-level person. Gretel allocates the budget and gets rid of the project, and he doesn't care about other things. Anyway, how to establish a project and how many people to recruit, and Via will naturally submit a report. He also participates in weekly group meetings regarding project direction and progress. If there is something that needs attention or a change of direction, he can influence it at any time. Tisk, before I knew it, I had become the boss of a large laboratory. After settling matters in his mage tower, Gretel took Cyrilla with him the next day and began a regular commute to and from get off work. Well, I went to the hospital first in the morning, walked around the obstetrics and gynecology ward, and took 2 surgeries. Later in the morning, I sit in the outpatient department and wait and see if there are any new cases. If not, I will work hard to read the magic structure and write a paper. Have dinner with the necromancers at noon, and hold a group meeting to learn about the progress of the cholera vaccine. In the afternoon, we went straight to the temple of the god of war. Bishop Salem greeted him at the door and saw a giant deer over 2 meters tall and with its horns spread over 4 meters wide, dragging a carriage and galloping towards him. Mage Nordmark came out of the carriage, and then turn around and reach out. A silver-haired elf beauty with straight eyes was supported by him and slowly walked out of the carriage. As he walked, he muttered, S-wave, T-wave, R-wave, atrial fibrillation, ventricular fibrillation. Who is this? Bishop Salem rushed forward to greet him. There is an elf lady beside the mage Nordmark, and the temple has long heard of it. This elf lady had been to the royal capital with Master Nordmark and helped perform an operation on the queen, and the temple had also heard about it. Miss Elf was also formally received by the queen in the palace. There is no doubt that the temple should give her sufficient courtesy. Perhaps the archbishop should also come out to greet her? Anyway, he hurried over and asked the person's name and asked for an introduction. Greet had no intention of formal introduction at all. He just casually raised his hand and said with a smile, This is Miss Cyrilla Moonlight Fraser Greet, my friend. This time she is teaching about electric defibrillation. She will be my assistant and participate in the teaching together. Bishop Salem saluted quickly. Cyrilla turned her eyes following the sound and nodded casually, her eyes still a little straight. Greet nodded sheepishly. Sorry for the long wait. So, let's start quickly. The teaching place arranged for Gretel by the temple of the god of war is in a chapel on the left side of the apse. According to Greet's request, a magic pig was prepared for demonstration. A group of powerful god of war priests will definitely have excess strength, not insufficient strength. When Greet gave the order, Bernard didn't even need to take action. They all rushed forward in a hurry. Lift the magic pig, turn it on its back, and tie it to the chopping board. Strictly restrained, gagged, and the podium cleaned. The scene is not like teaching, but rather like killing a pig. Bernard sat idly in the corner of the first row, while Cyrilla stood on the other side in a daze. It was only after she came out of seclusion that she realized that Gretel had improved the magic that had saved her to a practical level. Why so fast? You didn't even wait for me to study together. Saying that, Cyrilla knew it was just saying that. When a patient needs treatment, Greet will never leave a spell unstudied, just to wait for her. She complained like this just to make a request. I don't care. You have to teach me. You have to teach me. Okay, then, Take a look at these papers, materials, and instructions first. So, Sarah spent all her sleep and food to see the present. When she got off the carriage, her mind was still in a mess, with a lot of information swirling around. Until she heard Greet cough slightly and asked, "Ahem, have you previewed all the previous materials?" "Previewed?" "Wrote. I don't understand it at all." Sarah shrank her neck and quietly took a half step back. Looking sideways, I saw the god of war priests on the left, all with sad faces and confused answers. "I have previewed." Looking like that, it was exactly the same as when she felt dizzy while reading a book. Sarah was secretly a little happy. On the podium, Greet smiled slightly and waved his hand to wave a light and shadow. Silent Phantom outlines a heart and cuts it horizontally to reveal 4 chambers. Aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, superior and inferior vena cava, all available. Come on, who can tell me first, when the heart beats, where does the blood flow from to where? A small number of people shrank back. For the first question, Greet wanted to give face to the temple of the god of war, so he asked a bishop who looked confident to answer. Fortunately, this person answered pretty well, but the questions that followed were more frustrating than the others. Which of these electrocardiograms shows atrial fibrillation? Which one is ventricular fibrillation? Why can't we continue to shock immediately after defibrillation and do a set of chest compressions? Forget it. After asking a series of questions, Greet confirmed one thing: these god of war bishops may have memorized all the relevant knowledge, but they are far from the point of understanding it. He waved his hand. Let's do an experiment to demonstrate the effect of electric current on the beating of the heart. Cyrilla. Why? The silver dragon girl jumped up happily. Greet inserted the heart electrode needle, set up the battery pack, and raised the electrode to demonstrate to everyone. Now let's let this current pass through the limbs first. Positive pole, negative pole, poke at the demon pig. The demon pig, which had been cleanly shaved and transformed from a black pig to a white pig, snorted twice but showed no reaction. Gretel sent up an electrocardiogram and raised his voice. Next, we will let the current pass directly through the heart, through the electrode needle inserted in the heart. Everyone, pay attention to the electrocardiogram. 3, 2, 1. As soon as the electrodes fell, the electrocardiogram immediately changed into a series of scattered and rapid wave forms. Gretel took away the electrode and looked around. Compared to electric defibrillation magic, treating fatal injuries is not very efficient. Sarah, please demonstrate it to everyone. Okay. The silver dragon girl raised her hand slightly, and a ray of milky white light shone directly on the heart of the demon pig. The electrocardiogram returned to normal in an instant. The demon pig grunted a few times and struggled hard, almost knocking over the chopping board on which it was tied. Gretel. Misstep. After Cyrilla advanced, the intensity of the healing technique increased so much. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. I figured it out, regardless of whether it is on the list or not, Shanghai will not be unblocked within 14 days. Regardless of whether we are on the list or not, our lovely volunteers will not let us go downstairs unless we are doing nucleic acid tests. By the way, yesterday's announcement said that all the city's nucleic acid tests will be done today. However, we will not do nucleic acid tests and will instead be notified of doing antigen tests. If you're tired, lie down. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 807. Gretel's first class at the Temple of the God of War lasted for a full hour. Let's talk about the structure of the heart first, and then talk about the measurement method of electrocardiogram. Halfway through the lecture, people kept raising their hands. You said the probe fell on the left wrist. What if this soldier's left arm is broken? What should I do if my left leg is broken? Can the probe be placed on the wrist of my right leg? Will the electrocardiogram pattern be deformed? Will it be the other way around? Putting the probe on your chest, do you have to unbutton your clothes? Is it okay if you don't unbutton it? It's very troublesome to take off the armor. Gretel. Regarding the previous questions, fortunately, I am an experienced emergency physician and have encountered various situations. If you are a medical student just out of school, especially a second-year medical student who memorizes by rote with a book in hand, you really won't be able to answer the question. The last question. Come on, come up. Greet waved to the questioner with a smile. Looking around, he summoned a large tablecloth and covered it with the magic pig and chopping board. Look for the location of the electrocardiogram lead. Where is it? In the fourth intercostal space on the right edge of the sternum. Don't fumble, just point it out with magic as if you were looking through your armor and clothes. The Ares bishop who asked the question bent down and bounced up. He tried hard not to frown, and looked at the demon pig through the tablecloth, then shined a bright light. Well, the pig heart is probably here, so the fourth intercostal space, 2, 3, 4, 5, is here. Gretel moved quickly and threw down a mage's trick, coloring the landing point of the light. Then, without taking a breath, he issued instructions one after another. The fourth intercostal space on the left edge of the sternum. The center point of the first two positions. The left midclavicular line, where it intersects with the fifth intercostal space. The front line of the left axilla is at the same level as the previous position. The left mid-axillary line is at the same level as the previous position. The god of war bishop was in a hurry when he yelled, and a thin layer of sweat soon broke out on his forehead. Gretel waited for him to finish marking all the marks, then raised his hand, and the tablecloth fell into pieces and fluttered away. Dozens of pairs of eyes fell on the demon pig's chest. It seemed that the gaze was too intense. Even if the strong boar was tightly tied, it could not help but twist its body and grunt a few times. Greet glanced at it, and then sighed quietly. The first placement was wrong. The second placement was also wrong. The third landing point is correct, but the first two are wrong. Just getting it right is of no use. The god of war bishop's face turned red when he was irritated by his gaze. Under the disappointed looks of his colleagues, especially the archbishop, he was at a loss and said hurriedly, "This is a pig. This is a pig. Which rib is where? I'm not familiar with it. If it were a human, I would definitely not admit it." It makes sense. Greet nodded with a smile, thinking it would be good to give him a chance to save his face. He waved downward casually. "Can anyone do me a favor and give a demonstration?" Immediately another bishop walked up quickly. Greet made a lie-down gesture, and the man looked left and right, hesitating where to lie down. He couldn't lie directly on the pig. Even if the pig has been tied up, he will not be given a hoof directly. Lying like this will not be comfortable. It does not meet the requirement of lying flat. Or, move the magic pig away? It's not that it can't be moved, it's just a little heavy. Otherwise, two people move together? Or call two knights to come in and do the work. The god of war bishop's thoughts had just turned halfway when he saw the elf lady beside the mage Nordmark taking a step forward and leaning over to prolong the case. He sweated a little and quickly put his hands together. "Miss, you don't need to do this kind of rough work. Carrying bills, dragging pigs, etc., how can the elf lady from afar do this kind of work herself?" Before his hand reached the edge of the case, there was a creak, and the 2-meter-long case was already twitching rapidly. The sound of the desk's feet dragging on the floor only made one sound, and the heavy magic pig, as well as the oak strips underneath the magic pig, flew out completely. Then, it rotated 90 degrees and settled vertically on the other side of the podium. Mr. Bishop raised his head blankly. Not far ahead, the silver-haired elf lady clapped her hands and stood back calmly, as if she had done an ordinary little thing. No, miss, being able to drag the case is one thing, being able to drag the case with the magic pig so easily that it flies up, as if you are not using any force at all, is another thing. What level of warrior are you? It's a pity that the current situation does not allow him to talk to Miss Elf, or strike up a conversation. Greed had already summoned 2 floating saucers and made a pleased gesture. Mr. Bishop quickly shut up and lay down on him to serve as a teaching tool. Wrong. Wrong. Wrong again. Let's take a look at what the electrocardiogram will look like based on the wrong placement. With ready-made and bloody examples of error before their eyes, the bishops finally shut up. Gretel looked around and raised his voice. If the placement point of the probe can be accurately controlled, of course you can do the electrocardiogram directly without taking off your clothes or armor. But generally speaking, it is recommended to take off your clothes, as it will be more accurate. Besides, he couldn't help but smile. Whether you need DC cardioversion, defibrillation, or chest compressions, you need to take off your clothes. Instead of taking them off when the time comes, why not prepare in advance? But no one seemed to listen to him. Most of the God of War bishops, especially the younger ones, secretly glanced at Sarala, then at Sarala, and then at Sarala again. Well, in the eyes of the God of War priests, the attractiveness of an elf beauty with stunning looks may reach 80 points. But, a guy who is very good looking and very good at fighting, who can push 8 horses and drag 9 cows backwards with one hand. The attractiveness reached 120 points in an instant, and it is still rising infinitely, upward, upward. Ahem. There was a slight cough from the corner of the first row of the classroom. In an instant, the older and younger bishops collectively shuddered, came to their senses, and returned their attention to Gretel. Gretel quickly glanced in that direction. An old man with white beard and white hair nodded gently to him. Your Excellency the Archbishop. Greet bowed slightly and saluted. Archbishop Nogaro looked pleasant and nodded to him. Mage Nordmark, the first aid plan you promote is very important for rescuing brave warriors. Can I ask, can the use of electric claws for rescue be effective without being paired with electrocardiogram magic? Well, that's a good question. Greet smiled at him. In fact, without using electrocardiogram magic to control the triggering timing of the electric claw, the rescue success rate is very low. Regarding this, I will demonstrate it to you again. Sarala. Why? Brush. The case flew up again with the magic pig, and landed lightly back to the original place with only a soft click sound. The eyes of the God of War bishops were once again focused on Sarala. After a pause, they all turned to Gretel, a little dull and a little accusatory. How could you let a beautiful elf lady do such a thing? You are a mage and you don't want to do a rough job like moving pigs, so let the knight do it. Gretel hee. He inserted the steel needle, created ventricular fibrillation in the demon pig again, and called Sarala. Try it with the electric claw. Pay attention to the timing I tell you, and pay attention to controlling the strength. Okay, no problem. Sarala is gearing up. Isn't it just an electric claw? It's just a small level 1 spell. Although Silver Dragon is good at controlling ice and snow, as well as controlling wind, she can't trouble her with just small spells. What's more, after becoming an adult, she naturally understood the magic of controlling the wind from the blood memory of the dragon clan. Swirl the wind and gather the clouds, and the next natural step is electricity. Calling for a bolt of lightning is a joke. She stretched out her palm eagerly, fingertips stretched flat. Greet quickly took a big step back. Everyone should pay attention to the fact that when performing electric defibrillation, others must stay away from the patient. Crack. A bolt of bright silver lightning jumped out across the sky and hit the demon pig directly. The demon pig slapped its ears and kicked its legs. Before it could struggle, it turned directly into coke. Sarala was stunned for a moment, turned over her palm and looked at her fingertips, and then quickly threw Cure Fatal Wounds at the magic pig. While throwing it away, I was flustered and muttered. I didn't mean it. A white light went down. I did not expect. A white light went down. I just advanced. I didn't control my power well. A white light went down. In the entire classroom, all the bishops looked at Sarala in a wrong way. The first level electric claw can directly inflict fatal wounds on the third level magic pig. Miss, what is your magic level? It's definitely not possible at level 3, and maybe not at level 5. Level 7? Level 9? No, definitely more than that. These Cure Fatal Wounds were thrown out one by one without any chanting or pause, without even blinking. Even if you are a level 9 priest, you should at least take a break, right? The young bishops, especially those from non-aristocratic backgrounds, were all straight-eyed. Master Nordmark, how did you find an elf beauty with such high levels of magic, healing, and martial arts? Are you still standing on the side as your assistant, moving pigs when you are asked to move them, and striking lightning when you are asked to strike them? Damn it! Can you share your experience with us? Instead of looking for an elf beauty, it would be good to find a strong female warrior. Gretel had to ignore these burning glances. He coughed, stopped Sarala, and faced the audience. Everyone, please pay attention, this is why we have to control the power of electric claw. If the power is too weak, the level of the warrior being rescued is too high, and the electric shock will be ineffective. If the power is too strong, it will become like this. He spread his hands to the magic pig on the chopping board. Let's do an anatomy to see what kind of damage the strong current will cause to the internal organs, especially the heart. When we rescue people in the future, the treatment can be more targeted. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Tomorrow is the period for double monthly votes. Please remember to vote for me tomorrow. It is said that our community was on the list yesterday because there was an elderly man who was hospitalized since the 16th. He got positive in the hospital on the 21st, and has never returned home. Then our community became a closed area. When we called the neighborhood committee said we didn't know who was positive. When we called the citizen hotline and the district CDC, there was no chance of getting through, and the signal kept busy. There is no way to appeal, and I have to be detained for another 14 days. I am so irritated. Especially since I heard that starting from April 28, districts with zero social coverage can gradually unblock. Cry. Yeah. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 808. Gretel's lecture started from the principles, to electrocardiogram analysis, to rescue methods for various heart symptoms, and then to breaking it apart and crushing it, and explaining the spell configuration to these bishops. After 5 days of lectures and a total of 5 hours of lectures, I finally stumbled into the practical stage. In other words, let all the bishops try to cast spells. Of course, start with electrocardiogram practice. It's impossible to defibrillate right away. What are you thinking about? Gretel divided them into groups of 4, each group occupying a bed, and each bishop took turns to lie on it. The other 3 people gathered around him and cast spells. Gretel and his assistant Miss Sarah were responsible for walking around and watching. Spell casting failed. Spell casting failed. Hey, you landed at the wrong place. You this. After checking it over and over again, the bishops who followed suit were defeated by more than half. Gretel looked at Bishop Salem in embarrassment. How about we stop talking for half a month? Your learning progress is so impressive. Bishop Salem was also in despair. After such a long time, the progress of the bishops in learning electrocardiogram magic can be described as appalling. He asked tentatively. Which is more difficult, electrocardiogram or electroclaw? That must be an electrocardiogram, Gretel answered without thinking. The electric claw is an inherent magic of the evocation system. The spell configuration only has the potential to activate 2 modules, and finally added an adjustment of the output size to it. As for the electrocardiogram magic, it was his original creation and several related spells put together. He couldn't figure it out himself, so he asked MS Glory Scale for help. When I first started practicing, I suffered so much. Then, Bishop Salem thought for a while and went to ask the Archbishop for instructions. Otherwise, let's sort through it first. Which colleagues have mastered the electric claw spell thoroughly? If you don't even master this, don't waste time. The time of the Nordmark mage is also very valuable. It was promised 10 hours, only 10 hours. Spending time on those guys who can't learn is a waste of everyone's time. He didn't want to have another negotiation, another tug of war with the magicians, another run around as tired as a dog, find a group of knights for the Nordmark mage to study, and even help him exchange 100,000 silver coins. By the way, this Nordmark mage specifically requested that all silver coins be new. Of course, the food in the mage tower is still delicious. If it really comes to a point where negotiation is necessary, he doesn't mind having another meal. This request, of course, was approved by His Excellency the Archbishop. So, all the bishops lying on the bed rolled up and formed a group of 4, facing a tied domestic pig. Gretel, can we actually use a rabbit? Or a dog? In line with the principle of animal experimentation, small animals can be used instead of large animals. But as soon as he proposed it, he was simply rejected by Bishop Salem. Anyway, there are so many knights and warriors in the temple, and they need to eat every day. Don't worry, these pigs are not enough for them to eat for one meal. Greet, you can do it, you are strong, and you have money. Can't I just shut up? Sirrah's attitude was obviously much more positive. Killing a group of animals for no reason is naturally not good, but these pigs are going to be killed and eaten anyway, so she doesn't have so many psychological barriers. Jumping around, checking in groups. Electric claw. Hey, your current is too strong. Electric claw. The current is too small, this won't work. Electric claw. Hey, you didn't release it? Electric claw. Don't get too close. Gretel. Gretel. Greet rushed over. Hey, we agreed that no one should be allowed to stand next to the patient before the defibrillation was turned on. When it came time to try out the electric claw, why couldn't we draw inferences from one example? Gretel sent out electrocardiograms, directed everyone to perform chest compressions, artificial respiration, and directed everyone to use treatment techniques, and finally rescued the sloppy guy. Then, throw it out directly. Guys who can't master this kind of basic operation are not qualified to continue learning. The progress of mastering the electric claws is not bad, only a small number of people have been screened out. Greet stopped teaching for 10 days to give them time to make up lessons, and then checked again. This time, most of them were kicked out cleanly. There are those who can't master the electric claw, there are those who can't master the electrocardiogram, there are those who can master both, but they can't connect them, there are those who master the magic of electric defibrillation. Apart from Archbishop Noguera, only 5 bishops remained who still retained the qualifications to continue their studies. Others can only wait for the archbishop or bishops to master the spell and improve it into a divine spell before slowly teaching it. This is already good. Archbishop Noguera twirled his beard, glanced at the 5 remaining bishops in front of him, and commented unhurriedly. This spell seems simple, but it's actually not that easy to master. Some spellcasters who don't often delve into spell configurations really can't learn it in half a month. He glanced at Bishop Ampton vaguely. The 7th level bishop, who was the first to discover the value of magic, had cold sweat on his face and lowered his head in shame. He himself was researching desperately, and found that he was unsuccessful in studying, so he had to report it. Afterwards, Master Nordmark explained it in detail, and after practicing it repeatedly and studying it for so long, it was finally possible to successfully release it. As for other people, it's really not that they don't work hard, it's that they have a poor foundation. There are still more people who master the electric claw. After all, it is an attack spell. The electrocardiogram thing is too convoluted. So, what we need to do next is to organize a group of warriors to pass the level. At the same time, let the bishops become familiar with spell operations. This. Bishop Salem lowered his head and turned over the schedule in his hand. According to Master Nordmark's opinion, animal experiments will be conducted first tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Only the bishop with 20 pigs per person and a rescue success rate of more than 80% can start directly. This way, if something goes wrong, he will still have remedies opportunity. So we want to ruin another batch of pigs. His Excellency the Archbishop was speechless. But there is no other way. Master Nordmark is unusually persistent on this point. If the success rate of animal experiments is not enough, we must not try it on humans. Moreover, this time not only will a group of pigs be destroyed, but a large number of foxgloves will also be destroyed. The medicines given to people are of course refined, processed, and made into small pills. Feeding to pigs is not so precise. Just estimate the dosage and feed it directly to the pigs. Atrial fibrillation is atrial fibrillation, ventricular fibrillation is ventricular fibrillation. If one has fibrillation, rescue one. By the way, are foxgloves ready? Ready. A bishop next to him frowned and sighed. This Nordmark mage asked for too many things. This batch of experiments used up all the foxgloves in the medicine library. It's winter now. It's winter. If it is summer, people can go all over the mountains and fields to collect medicinal herbs. Foxgloves is not a rare magic potion, but it is troublesome to prepare, and the dosage control is a great test for the pharmacist's skills. However, it is winter now. They had to ask Elderwood to bring a group of God of Nature priests and quickly gave birth to a group. As for the foxgloves that were spawned, can it have the same effect? Ahem, it's for pigs anyway. If one handful is not enough, add another handful until atrial fibrillation occurs. Gretel didn't care about such things. 20 pigs per person, this is already the most basic requirement, and an 80% success rate is also the minimum requirement. In your previous life, without a medical certificate or training, who would dare to let you do it independently when rescuing patients? The superior physician must be watching, guiding, and responsible for the results. What he needs to face now is another thing. As soon as I returned to the Mage Tower after giving lectures in the temple, I saw a carriage equipped with gold tongs inlaid with silver, parked in front of the Mage Tower. When Gretel jumped out of the carriage, 2 unfamiliar nobles had already quickly jumped out of the carriage. An older man and a younger man came forward quickly. The elder stopped 3 steps in front of Gretel, pulled his son, and bowed. Mage Nordmark, I have admired you for a long time. I am Hosgarid, Viscount Saran, and I have taken the liberty to come to visit. I have something to ask for. Hello, hello. Gretel shook his hand blankly. Viscount Saran? Where is the fiefdom? Have I seen it before? What are your demands? He led the other party to the small living room, where the guests and hosts sat down. Master Norwood and Aurora were in their own laboratories and did not come out to join in the fun. Only Cyrilla stayed with Gretel, holding the hot cocoa served by the invisible servant, looking around curiously. Who is this? This one next to him is his son? He looks a little pale. Do you want to ask Greet for treatment? In this moment, both parties had finished their greetings. Viscount Seren obviously knew the trick of dealing with mages. He reached out and pushed a box and went straight in. Mage Nordmark, I heard that you are working with the Temple of the God of War to implement a plan to turn warriors into knights. I don't know. He stretched out his hand and opened the lid of the box. Inside was a jewel-filled set of pearl necklaces, earrings, and bracelets. The Viscount pushed the jewelry box in the direction of Sarara, and then tugged the young man beside him. My son, are you lucky enough to participate? Ah, Greet quickly glanced at the boy without even looking at the box of jewelry. The young man had a strong build and a strong aura, but he looked a little dazed. Maybe it's already level 4, reaching the threshold, but I have already handed over the selection of candidates for this project to the temple. Your Excellency, Viscount, since you want your son to participate in this plan, why don't you directly ask the temple? My son has already been attacked once before. Unfortunately, it failed and he was raised for 2 years, Viscount Salen answered honestly. This time, the temple did not put him on the list. I also asked the Archbishop, and the Archbishop said that it would be better to use high-level potions, but this time the plan is only for warriors who use basic potions. That. I don't care about gifts or anything like that, Cyrilla interrupted abruptly. Greet, just do whatever you want, don't worry about what I mean. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Tomorrow is the 28th, and it's time for double monthly passes. Please everyone vote for me tomorrow. For 2,000 monthly passes, 2 additional chapters will be added. For 3,000 monthly passes, 4 additional chapters will be added. For 4,000 monthly passes, 6 additional chapters will be added, and so on. There is good news today. The disinfectant I ordered on JD.com on the 10th has finally arrived. I'm really glad I didn't wait to use it right away, otherwise the daylily would have been cold. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 810. Want to jump in line? Want to add a jam? The smile on Greet's face remained unchanged, but his eyes became slightly colder. Cutting in line is the most annoying thing. Whether in the emergency department or outpatient department, queue jumping, and quarreling over queue jumping are simply daily dramas in hospitals. I can't think about it, as my blood pressure rises, my breathing speeds up, and I get PTSD. Sometimes the patients who queued up argued with the patients who jumped in the queue, and sometimes the doctor asked the patients who jumped in the queue to queue up, and the queue jumping patient pointed at the doctor's nose and scolded him. Well, just for scolding, the doctor was already thankful, at least he didn't hit him. I just don't understand why those patients who scolded the doctor so much think that the doctor will do his best to treat them. Sadly, most doctors, no matter whether they try their best or not, at least treat them well. Forget it. You jump in line at the outpatient clinic, but don't jump in line at the emergency department. Emergency rooms are graded according to the severity of their condition. You made a big fuss, I have a terrible stomachache and am about to die, and accused the doctor of not being medically ethical and refusing to treat you. The one who just came in next to you is really about to die. As for scientific research queue jumping, do you know what sample selection criteria are? Why do you insist on inserting subjects who do not meet the inclusion criteria? Alas, at least this patient's family still knows how to smile, say nice things, and come to give gifts. So is this the doctor's status that has improved, or is the doctor's status supposed to be this high, but it was just that he was too low in his previous life? Alas, I don't think about it anymore, I just cry when I think about it too much. Gretel took a deep breath, and just when he was about to refuse politely, Viscount Salen leaned forward and asked humbly. Mage Nordmark, please help me a lot Kwanzaa. If you don't succeed in advancing this time, it will become more and more difficult in the future. In a family like ours, the heir is not even a knight, and it will be very troublesome in the future. This is true. As far as Greet knows, although there is no legal requirement in the Kingdom of Kent that the successor to a noble title must be a knight, or an equivalent professional, as a noble, he naturally has the obligation to fight. If you cannot become a professional with combat effectiveness, the future will be very uneven, and the entire family may even collapse. And knighthood is already the broadest path of advancement among all. The Viscount's son failed to advance in one attempt and was seriously injured and recuperated for 2 years. As expected, a father must be anxious and bring his son to ask for help. Only. Why do you want your son to participate in this plan? For the sake of the other party's good attitude, Greet also asked seriously. If you just need to advance, with high-level potions, and under the guidance of the temple, it should be safe, right? This. Viscount Seren coughed violently. His eyes wandered for a moment, and under Gretel's eager gaze, he finally told the truth. High-end potions can only guarantee an 80% success rate. Moreover, if the user does not have enough savings and insists on trying hard to pass the level, the possibility of injury is high. High-end potions can only save one life. If you can take action. Gretel's previous experiments have proven that with electric defibrillation, electric cardioversion magic, and subsequent targeted treatment, the dying can be brought back, the seriously injured can be reduced to minor injuries, and the recovery time of minor injuries can be shortened. Therefore, Viscount Salen very much hopes to have more stability and add an extra layer of insurance to his son's advancement. Greet nodded slightly, acknowledging his reason. However, it is still not possible to join this plan. The temple's advanced plan this time is aimed at warriors who take ordinary potions. Only when all potions are of uniform quality and the quality of the personnel is uniform can the best teaching effect be achieved. Since you want to use high-grade potions, I'm afraid it won't be possible. Got in. Why isn't the advanced potion working? Viscount Seren said anxiously. Aren't they all the same? At most, one is rougher and the other is more refined. If something goes wrong, you can still save your life. Why can't it be stuffed in? Master Nordmark, please, try your best to help. It sounds like the refined potion is a refined and purified version of Foxglove, maybe mixed with some healing potions. Maybe it's a sustained release type? In this world, how is the slow release function achieved, or if the therapeutic effect is triggered in a corresponding state, how is it achieved? Greet was a little curious. Of course, the advanced plan cannot be stuffed in, but there are workarounds. In this case, maybe you can talk to the temple and arrange for your son to advance alone? As long as the time can be arranged, I can look after him. Viscount Seren's cheek twitched violently. Greet stared at him silently for half a minute before he lowered his voice and told the truth in embarrassment. A family like ours can usually only hire one bishop. It is said that for this advanced plan, the archbishop will be present in person. I just thought that I could put my son in. Alas, how pitiful the hearts of parents in the world are. Even so, Greet shook his head firmly. I will not interfere with the decision-making of the temple. However, if you believe me, you can let your son try to advance in my mage tower. So far, I have taken care of nearly 100 warriors to advance, and none of them died. No one was seriously injured. Viscount Seren sighed, the wrinkles on his face knitted together. He looked back at his son, then at Gretel, and then at his son. His face was filled with distress and embarrassment. Mage Nordmark, can you estimate how high the probability is for the dog to advance, or how likely it is to be in danger? How do I know this? I am a mage. I'm not a knight. Neither the knight nor the temple of the god of war can keep him safe and successfully advance. How can I give an answer? No, wait, maybe there is a way to estimate the probability. Greed frowned in thought. As soon as he thought about it, the entire living room fell silent. Viscount Seren and his son held their breath attentively, not daring to take a breath. Sarala looked at this and that, raised her palms, and made two silent gestures. How about I have a fight with him? Maybe you'll advance as you go along? Yes, Gretel suddenly clapped his hands. He rushed to the wall, pressed a sound transmission device on the wall, and said loudly, "Moss, please ask Master Norwood to come over. Moss, please ask Master Norwood to come to the small reception room. I have something to see him." "Okay boss," Tailing replied hummingly. Greed turned around and returned to his seat, his expression in high spirits. The main reason for danger after taking the medicine is that the heart cannot bear it. I have designed a method to initially test the heart's endurance. The main purpose is to monitor the changes in the electrocardiogram during exercise. But didn't you say you couldn't do it before? Cyrilla probed. Gretel smiled. So I have to think of a new way. Well, I couldn't do it before. The soldiers were in vigorous exercise and their movements changed too fast, and I couldn't keep up. But I thought of a simpler way. Ah! Norwood Master, you are here. With potion stained on his robe and powder floating on his hood, this transformation magician came in a hurry. Gretel commanded the invisible servant to add an extra seat for him and said quickly, "I would like to ask you to make something. It is a rubber belt, or any belt, wrapped around two rollers, rolling back non-stop. The speed can be adjusted, so that people can keep moving on it." I ran forward, but I couldn't reach the end. Master Norwood was instantly shocked. "Boss, what kind of crazy thoughts did you have to think of such a thing? Who has offended you and wants to be thrown up here by you and run away all the time? But as an employee, you cannot question your boss's requirements." Master Norwood cursed while staring at the silent phantom summoned by Gretel and observed it carefully. "Well, it doesn't look difficult. It just requires two upper and lower plates and two rollers to pull the rubber belt to rotate continuously. To adjust the speed, you just need to turn the motor up or down. This function has been available for a long time. How fast does it need to be adjusted to? When you sprint at high speed, how fast can you go?" Gretel turned to ask Viscount Seren's son. In a previous life, the men's 100-meter world record seemed to be 9.58 seconds. In this world, level 4 warriors or new knights had no idea how fast they could run. In short, as long as you can't run to death, run to death. This is definitely true in extreme training for warriors. Under Gretel's guidance, Master Norwood quickly made the world's first treadmill. The son of Viscount Seren dressed lightly and got on the treadmill. Gretel threw an electrocardiogram at him and sat next to him with a smile. 3, 2, 1. Start running. EKG tablet experiment begins. I can't keep up with those warriors running around all over the place swinging their fists and swords, so I can't keep up with you. Well, my heart rate gradually increased, but other than that, it was pretty normal. Gretel stared at the electrocardiogram and asked Master Norwood to control the motor and slowly increase the speed. Heart rate 120 beats/min, 130 beats/min, 140 beats/min. It has reached 180 beats/min, and it is still in sinus rhythm, which is very good. It seems that it still has the ability to continue upward. You know, after those warriors advanced, regardless of success or failure, the fastest heart rate reached 200 beats/minute. In other words, only by forcing yourself to this point can you hope to cross the limit. Just as Greed was about to call Mage Norwood to increase the speed of the treadmill, he saw the transformation mage throwing magic onto the treadmill axis one by one with a nervous look on his face. Restoration. Grease technique. Icy wind? Is this the shaft that is about to wear out, or is it about to burn? In short, I am afraid that the speed of this treadmill cannot be improved today. Gretel sighed. Come down first, let's repair the treadmill, adjust it, and test it again tomorrow. Before the words were spoken, Sirrah suddenly stood up and walked quickly to the opposite side of the treadmill. In an instant, Greet saw that the heart rate on the electrocardiogram suddenly accelerated, exceeding 200. Gretel, so long way can be used in this way? There are actually 1,744 votes already. There are still 256 monthly votes left, actually only 128 votes are needed, to have 2 additional chapters. Thank you guys. Keep voting. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today, for the first time, the number of new cases in Shanghai has not exceeded 10,000, diagnosed and asymptomatic, outcome. I hope you will get better soon and everything will return to normal. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 811. Addersaren's face turned pale. He obeyed the order and ran as fast as he could on that strange-looking machine. Speed up again, until you are panting, until you are sweating, until your heart is almost knocked out of your chest. Oh, by the way, that machine was handmade on site by the transformation mage in the mage tower. As he ran, the transformation mage squatted on the side of the machine and used magic to repair and maintain it on the spot. In short, looking at it horizontally and vertically, it looks unreliable. So why am I running on this? Why do you have to keep running and accelerating until you can't breathe? If you slow down a little, you will fall off the rubber belt. The Nordmark mage kept shouting, "Speed up! Speed up! If I speed up any more, I will die, okay." Just as he was full of slander, a cold, violent breath hit his face. Addersaren's chest felt tight, his whole body froze, and he was almost dragged down by the rubber belt. What it is? What is it? So ferocious, so terrifying, it was like a bloody mouth opened in front of his face, trying to swallow him whole. There is no need to chew, the teeth are gently closed, the bones are broken, the flesh is broken, and the blood is splashed. Am I going to die? Am I really going to die? His vision went dark and he almost fell down. Amidst the ringing in his ears, he heard his father shouting worriedly. "Addo! Addo, let him come down. Don't stop. Keep running," a voice shouted angrily. The voice is high, majestic, and full of confidence. "I'm watching. Nothing will happen. Keep running." Yadu didn't know what was wrong with him. Are you afraid of the person who spoke? Or do you follow orders subconsciously? In short, he gritted his teeth and continued to run desperately. Swing your arms, lift your legs, expand your chest, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The killing intent was heavy on his body, like a huge mountain, making every breath he took feel like a knife. As I ran, my vision became darker and darker, and my consciousness became increasingly blurry. The whole figure seemed to be swimming in a black-red swamp. He had no idea where he was, and he almost didn't even know who he was. Viscount Saren's hands were sweating. He quietly looked at Mage Nordmark, and saw Mage Nordmark staring closely at the light screen next to his son. The curves on the light screen went up and down, and the numbers kept jumping. Look at the girl next to Master Nordmark again, and see that she is smiling slightly and looking relaxed. Sometimes he looked at his son, and sometimes he looked down at the machine, looking quite curious. As for the new transformation mage, except for looking down at the machine wholeheartedly, nothing else seems to have anything to do with him. Mage Nordmark, should you ask him to stop this? He spoke intermittently. Although Sarala's explosive momentum was not directed at him, he was able to catch a little bit of it. My legs are a little weak, my chest is a little blocked, and my heartbeat is a little fast. If he hadn't been worried about his son, he would have fallen to the ground with a plop. By the way, where did this pressure come from? Why didn't the other three react at all? Poor Viscount Seren didn't know that Gretel was always carrying the endless ink pen and was completely immune to mental attacks. As for Mage Norwood, well, since Cyril is stationed in the Mage Tower, he has become very familiar with the anti-dragon aura. Greet stared closely at the electrocardiogram, occasionally glancing at the blood pressure, blood oxygen, and Yadosaren's condition, concentrating on it. When he heard Viscount Salen's question, he dismissed it directly without thinking. No, I'm watching. If there's a problem, I'll stop it, Cyrilla. Get your healing skills ready. Okay. Cyrilla responded happily. The white light flashed on the fingertips of his right hand, and a healing spell was fastened, ready to save the situation at any time. Hey, it seems like we don't need her for the time being. Gretel stared at the electrocardiogram. The heart rate is relatively high, the curve is okay, and there is no myocardial ischemia or other dangerous conditions for the time being. No problem, I can hold on one more time. In the electrocardiogram tablet experiment, after reaching the maximum heart rate, you can still run for several minutes. Or, try harder. He concentrated slightly, used his mental power to activate the spell configuration of inspiration technique, and threw a spell over. This spell gives warriors courage and confidence, helps them fight fear and ignore pain. To Gretel, it was just a shot of unknown amounts of adrenaline. Throw this inspiration technique over, and the effect will be immediate. Yadosaren only felt that his heart, which was about to explode, suddenly surged with strength, and the aura that oppressed him was no longer so terrifying. He couldn't help but roared from the bottom of his heart. Dash. Run. Run. Squeeze out all your strength. Gather all your energy. Withstand that pressure and climb that mountain. Come. Come. He has advanced. Viscount Seren stood up straight suddenly, with a look of surprise on his face. Gretel stared at the electrocardiogram without saying a word, while Master Norwood below let out a heartfelt scream. The belt is broken. The strength of the physical body and the speed that a knight can achieve are completely different from a level 4 warrior. He didn't even have time to adjust the speed. The belt on the machine was stepped on and pushed backwards. In the end, the belt was simply broken. Well. I'm sorry, Mr. Mage, Viscount Seren hurriedly took out his wallet. I will compensate. Our Viscounty will definitely compensate. The chaotic farce ended with a list thrown by Greet. It's not a bill, of course it can't be a bill. It's a hand-rubbed experimental equipment. Greet wouldn't be stingy enough to ask for compensation. But please sign this lab report, Greet said with a smile. Experimental content, experimental process, and experimental results. Read it carefully. If you have no problem, just sign here. Viscount Seren tremblingly took the report and read it carefully from beginning to end. Well, it's not that I don't believe in Master Nordmark. The problem is that the things the Master asked to sign, and the nobles who signed without looking at them with their eyes closed, are all dead. He read it carefully and signed his name at the end. Then he turned the emerald cap on the seal ring, stamped it with the magic seal, and then started to take out the magic crystal card. How much do we need to pay? Is 1,000 gold coins enough? Or 2,000? Gretel hesitated for a moment, his eyes wandering. The price he quoted to the parliamentary army was 20 people, 1000 contribution points, to treat one person, and to treat 10 people, it was the same price. So far, on average, there are about 3 to 4 people in each group who need his treatment. On average, each person contributes 250 to 300 points. Counting other people's inspection costs, the average person. Approximately how much is it? How much should the contribution points be converted into gold coins? Please ask someone to give him a price. He is really not good at negotiating prices. Now think about the past life, all hospital charges had fixed price lists. What a happy era it was. While he was struggling, Master Norwood coughed at the side. A blood-burning potion, or burning warrior, is officially priced at 100 gold coins. The refined version of the potion is 10 times more expensive. It has a price but no market. If you want to buy it, you have to ask for favors. In other words, Gretel's move today, regardless of the success rate, at least saved the other party 1000 gold coins. 3000 gold coins. Viscount Seren immediately increased the pressure. Gretel coughed and nodded slightly. Then that's it? By the way, please take back the gift. No, 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 no. Please accept the gift. Viscount Seren seemed to have been burned by fire. He picked up the jewelry box, walked a few steps quickly, placed it on the small table against the wall, and then rushed back to his original position. Especially, there is absolutely no reason to take back the gift given to the beautiful lady. Greet glanced at Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl's eyes were lowered, the corners of her mouth were slightly raised, and she looked very satisfied. Very good, this plan is approved. He diligently sent Viscount Seren and his son out of the mage tower. Turning around and returning, Master Norwood immediately greeted him. Boss, this machine. Hey, Greet raised his hand to stop him from continuing. He clapped his hands in high spirits and quickly issued instructions. Mr. Norwood, you write the relevant documents for this, treadmill. Register it with the Parliament. Let your apprentice make a new, more stable machine. I will write the paper. The paper is finished, let's sell the machine to the temple. 3 days later, Archbishop Noguera unfolded Greet's newly published paper in his office. Of course, there was also a new machine in front of him that matched the paper. We have noticed that the observation of soldiers' electrocardiograms can help to closely monitor the dangers in the progression. In view of the fact that a large part of the coma and sudden death caused by the progression are caused by the overload of the heart, we think this kind of early warning is very important. Is necessary. A large part of the reason why we were unable to maintain close observation before was that the soldiers fought fiercely during the advancement process, and the magic probe of the electrocardiogram could not fit closely. For this reason, we designed such a machine. Run as hard as you can on the machine, and after reaching the extreme heart rate, maintain it for a period of time. In this way, you can test the pressure-bearing ability of the soldier's heart. In addition, during the running process, high-level warriors can also release their momentum and perform oppression. Warriors who run hard have a certain probability of directly advancing under pressure. Since the entire process is monitored, this advancement method is relatively safe. Silent Archbishop Nagra rubbed his temples with a headache. Do the math, how much new expenditure will we have to spend on this? The quotation given by the Alchemy Guild is 1000 gold coins per unit. Bishop Salem replied respectfully. Replacement rubber belts, lubricants, etc., as well as maintenance costs are calculated separately. I believe that the temple's first batch of 5 to 10 units will be enough. The key is not in purchasing the machine, but in the subsequent maintenance. No, follow-up repairs are not the most expensive. The key is that there must be someone who can read electrocardiograms. You guys are amazing. I cast 836 votes today. Already 1998 votes. The updates will be added today and tomorrow, and I will start writing the chapters that will be added in the monthly ticket immediately. Please keep up your hard work. If you can cast enough 3,000 starting monthly votes before the end of the month, there will be 4 additional chapters. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 812. 1,000 gold coins per unit. Archbishop Noguera glanced at the dark, heavy machine next to his desk that smelled of grease, and sighed heartbrokenly. 1 unit costs 1,000 gold coins. If you buy 5 units, it will equal 5,000 gold coins. If you buy 10 units, it will equal 10,000 gold coins. The money in the temple didn't come from the strong wind. And that's just the initial purchase cost. The archbishop looked at the rubber belt, and then at the motor on the head of the machine, and felt that this thing couldn't withstand the full power of the night. Just for that rubber belt, it's not unusual for one to break after running through it once. Until now, rubber has been the monopoly business of the Alchemy Guild. If you want to replace it, you can only buy it from the Alchemy Guild. By the way, there are also motors. Motors are the big money makers. In the past few years, the God of War Temple has also installed some generators. They are really easy to use, but maintenance is really expensive. Those vampires from the Alchemy Guild will never let go of the opportunity to squeeze money from them. Well, Archbishop, I think we can also use some substitutes. Bishop Salem observed the words and carefully made suggestions. For example, casting a large hollow wheel for soldiers to run inside. For example, I have seen this machine made of wood in the countryside, allowing livestock to run on it, and driving equipment to grind flour or saw wood. We can make it bigger. This is impossible. Archbishop Noguera immediately shook his head. Selen, you have to know that the core of this advanced method is not to let the warriors run, but to let the warriors run at a stable and uniform speed, stage by stage, constantly increasing the speed. To achieve this effect, the motor must be used for stable and precise control. What kind of hollow wheel, what kind of surface sawing wood machine, you want to do it 1 gear at a time, slowly speed up, and then maintain a uniform speed. Thinking too much. That kind of thing has no power and relies entirely on the warrior's 2 legs to move. When the fighters slow down, their movements also slow down, which cannot force the fighters to maintain their exercise intensity. Besides, the key to advancement is not to let them run away. The archbishop hates that iron cannot become steel. Let them run or let them fight. The God of War Temple has countless ways. However, the key to advancement is to ensure their safety through the observation of electrocardiograms during high-intensity exercise. As for observing electrocardiograms, the only alternative the temple can offer is to use mental power to lock down advanced warriors and pay attention to changes in their life auras at all times. And this kind of substitution is much less sophisticated than the ECG magic. Only priests of level 10 or above can use their spiritual power to lock the hearts of warriors in fierce battles, if you want to feel the heart is failing in a timely and accurate manner. Sorry, it takes an elite level 10 or above priest to have such delicate mental power. However, this invention of Master Nordmark can lower the threshold of fine perception to a 3rd level priest. As long as you can read an electrocardiogram. Oh, EKG. Archbishop Noguera rubbed his temples again and held back a painful groan. Looking at today's new paper, the requirements for ECG interpretation are much higher than learning about electrical defibrillation and cardioversion. With rescue magic, you can still judge on your own whether to trigger an electric shock. The caster is only there to assist. But this new way of advancement relies too much on the caster's judgment. To be honest, he has only memorized Master Nordmark's electrocardiogram manual so far and has not yet fully understood it. Rely on tutoring? Oh, you make a broken wheel or a broken wooden shaft in front of others, without using the machine invented by Master Mage Tower, and then expect others to teach you well? Even if Master Nordmark has a mellow temperament and is really willing to teach for the sake of curing diseases and saving people, the temple cannot afford to lose that face. By the way, go ask them. The rubber belt is a bit soft and I can't help but step on it. See if you can replace it with an iron one, even an iron chain. A few days later, Master Tower sent a second prototype. After communicating with the Alchemy Guild, Master Norwood consulted the Alchemy Guild's technical reserves and changed the rubber belts into metal tracks. Gretel was sitting happily under the eaves of the temple, holding the electrocardiogram and staring at the sweaty warriors running in the yard. So far, he has sorted out the steps for a warrior to become a knight several times, and has formed a complete process. The first step is a static electrocardiogram and blood test to observe whether there are any lesions in the heart and whether there is any illegal medication. As for CT scans and the like, they are considered private goods that he carries. The cost of routine examinations is too high and they will be removed in the future. The second step is an electrocardiogram plate test to observe the heart's ability to withstand strenuous exercise. Warriors who are lucky can advance at this step. Of course, most of them are not lucky. The third step is that in the previous stage, warriors who did not successfully advance can take medicine according to the traditional process, and then advance under the supervision of a healer. According to Bishop Salem's estimation, after this set of procedures, the number of warriors who can successfully advance will be at least 10% more than the temple's previous plan. So far, no one has died, and the probability of serious injury has dropped by more than 50%. This also means that warriors who fail to pass the level but do not die can suffer less damage, can accumulate strength in a shorter period of time, and reach the edge of advancement again. And a knight, compared to a fourth-level warrior. His fighting power, his worth and influence, the donations and assistance he can provide to the temple, have more than doubled. Just a win-win, right? By the way, Mage Nordmark, Bishop Salem called over and brought over a plate of berries, bright red and lovely, and placed them on Gretel's left hand. Each one is fresh and fresh. It has just been washed with spring water, and there are still fresh water drops hanging on it. It was early spring, the grass and trees were budding, and it was at least 2 months before the berries would bear fruit. These berries were grown in a greenhouse and maintained by special personnel using magical techniques. Even a bishop cannot eat what he wants. Only the archbishop can have a stable supply. Mage Nordmark, this is your second game today. He was complaining, but nothing showed on his face. He smiled kindly and intimately. His Excellency the Archbishop would like to ask you whether the same method can be applied to higher level knight advancement. For example, level 5 will advance to level 6, level 6 will advance to level 7, level 7 will advance to level 8. Higher, a knight will advance to a great knight or something. If the success rate can be increased a little, or the probability of serious injury or death can be reduced, the benefits to the temple will be much greater. As for the Grand Knight advancing to the Heavenly Knight, that's too far away. Each family has its own secret method, and each family has its own practice. The entire kingdom may not be able to produce a single Heavenly Knight in 10 years, and they are unlikely to be studied. Is it more advanced? Let them try it. Greet stared at the electrocardiogram, picked up a berry and threw it into his mouth, and said without thinking. Electrocardiogram, CT, cardiac color Doppler ultrasound, and dynamic plate test can all be done first. At least, they can be screened in advance to screen out those knights with cardiovascular problems. One, another, and another. Well, the berries provided by the temple are sour and sweet, with a hint of umami, they are really good. By the way, how many high-level knights are there that need to be advanced? You have agreed to cooperate with me in my research. There are 50 level 5 knights, 30 level 6 knights, and 20 level 7 and 8 knights. They all need it? Advanced. Bishop Salem. Oops, I have to adjust the list again, and there is more work. In addition to electrocardiogram, CT, and cardiac color Doppler ultrasound, the research on high-level Knight's dynamic flat panel experiments cannot be performed for the time being, and treadmills need to be continuously improved has also added a new content. In fact, this content is the key to Gretel's research. Human body resistance experiment. Come on, relax. After Greet finished the cardiac ultrasound, he threw a cleaning technique to clean the coupling agent on the other person's chest. Then, carefully fix the two electrodes and connect them to the relevant instruments. 3, 2, 1, start. Well, this resistor. Thanks to Senior Sister Philby and the team led by Senior Sister, they really developed a set of instruments for measuring voltage, current, resistance and so on. Gretel just needs to borrow it and use it. With his relationship with his senior sister, he doesn't even need to buy it. Saved a lot of scientific research funds. Good thing. The human body's resistance to electric shock is closely related to the human body's impedance. According to Gretel's previous experience, the higher the level of the Knight, the stronger the resistance to electric shock, and the higher the energy required to complete the electric defibrillation process. This resistance may be related to impedance, the thickness of the epidermis, the thickness of the stratum corneum, or the energy in the individual's body. In any case, guesses are just guesses. What he needs now is to conduct human experiments. Wait, why is the impedance so high? According to this impedance, it is impossible to defibrillate with a current of 750 joules. Mr. Master, do you want me to completely relax my strength? The Knight on the bed turned his head and smiled sheepishly. We Knights, even if we don't inspire fighting spirit, can't be defeated by a single electric claw. If we encourage fighting spirit with all our strength, we can still maintain our fighting power even if we are faced with 2 or 3 first-level magics. Gretel. So is it really the energy density in the body? Even if a high-level Knight is unconscious, there is still energy left in his body to spontaneously resist external lightning attacks. Also, an 8th-level Knight who is in perfect condition will not be afraid of one shot of electric claw, let alone achieve a therapeutic effect. Keep this state and let me test it. Relax your strength completely and let me test it again. Sarah. Please help me press the switch and record the data. I will feel the diffusion of electric energy. He sat on the edge of the bed and closed his eyes quietly. Sure enough, after the electric energy entered the Knight's body, it was like traveling through hard stones, and a lot of energy was consumed on the way. In comparison, entering the body of an ordinary warrior is like walking through loose soil or even a swamp. We will test the Knights of each level. Test everyone's human body impedance. Then compare them to see if we can summarize the rules. You guys are so awesome. Yesterday, you actually cast 1078 votes. So far today, we have 2,468 starting monthly tickets, and there are still 532 tickets left, which is 3,000. By 3,000, there will be 4 additional chapters. Everyone, work hard. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the reward of 15,000 starting coins. Thanks to Mobai for the 1666 reading points. Thanks to Bibashao for the 1,500 starting coin reward.